there's been a vibe shift. We talked about it a lot here in Davos. A rebuke of ESG, a rebuke of DEI. Robby Starbuck is out there going after companies. You now have a couple of activists going after your company.
Really? Not that I'm aware.
Are you aware of this?
Well, bring them on. No, I'm not aware of it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, in terms of what you think your approach to DEI should be, given that we've seen a whole number of companies effectively end these programs, in large part under pressure.
But we're very proud of what we've done. And what we've done is lift up cities, schools, states, hospitals, countries, companies, and we're going to do more of the same.
So you're going to tell these activists to go pound sand, it sounds like.
I don't know which ones you're talking about. If they've got something that we're doing wrong, I'd listen to what they have to say.
That was J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon with us in Davos last week. Following that interview, activist, investor, DEI activist, I should say, Robby Starbuck, releasing a video of his own angling for a debate with Dimon.
You can defend what you guys have done, and then we'll let the American public decide if DEI at J.P. Morgan Chase has been done in a way that is fair, compliant with the law, and certainly just all above board.
Right now, I want to bring in the man behind that video. I don't know if we're going to get a full-on debate, but we're going to try here. Activist DEI, Robby Starbuck. Robby, it's good to see you. We got to talk a lot about some of the work that you've been doing last week in Davos, just given the number of companies that have ended a lot of the DEI programs. I'm curious, I was looking at what J.P. Morgan's done, and I think there's lots of different definitions of DEI. I think there's quotas on one end and affirmative action, which I think a lot of people think maybe have gone too far. There's some of the things in terms of supporting transgender and other kinds of activities, either for employees or other things that I know you've argued against. But then I was looking at this. J.P. Morgan put out a release. This is a couple of years ago. It said J.P. Morgan Chase commits $350 million to grow Black, Latinx, and women-owned small businesses. And I sort of looked at that and I thought, you know, maybe that's a different version of DEI that you would support insofar as perhaps, and maybe it's good faith. I would hope it's in good faith that J.P. Morgan thinks that by investing in those markets, they can grow those markets and therefore grow their market. And how you think about that?
Well, first of all, using the term Latinx is something that's wildly offensive to most Latinos and Hispanics. And I think that the election kind of showed everybody the evidence that Latinos are moving away from a party that continues to use that kind of terminology. So if I were Jamie, I'd be embarrassed for using that. But beyond that, I would say, you know, anything you do as a company should not be considering race or ethnicity. And I think that's sort of the basis of the civil rights movement, right? So if you want to be sort of compliant and believe in these things that we always talked about, like equality and fairness, then we should be doing things fairly above board and not singling out people by race.
Well, but here's a question for you, and I ask it in good faith. I was talking to some CEOs actually last week in Davos who were talking about how one of the things that's happened in the last 4 years is they've expanded where they look for new employees. A lot of them have expanded after George Floyd's murder, in truth, to look at some of the HBCs. I'm thinking of Morehouse and other places like that. They say because they wanted to expand and find more talent. Do you look at that and say that that's an affirmative action program, or do you think that that could be done in good faith?
I look at this and say this is an affirmative action program. This is a J.P. Morgan program called Black Pathways Fellowship, and they have one for Latinos as well. And the actual result of that is that 67% of their interns are minorities, okay? We live in a country that's vast majority white still. That obviously tells you that these programs are having a, you know, preferential treatment basis for these other groups of people. And I'm not saying that people of all races shouldn't be represented. They should, but I think proportional to society, you would expect it to be if it was occurring naturally. It's not occurring naturally. This is something very clearly where they're putting their finger on the scales. And if you look at sort of the laws on the books, that's something that should be, I think, by any reasonable person seen as illegal.
Well, let me ask you this. So Ken Fraser used to be the CEO of Merck, African-American, one of the most prominent African-American CEOs in the country at the time. And he talked on this broadcast about getting an opportunity, getting a chance that he said he thought would have otherwise been unavailable to him had someone not sort of said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this guy because he did not look like everybody else. And I think there's also an argument to be made that once he got that job, he created opportunity for lots of other people who looked at him, African-Americans who looked at him as a role model. And I'm just, again, in a good faith way, curious, again, because I'm trying to wrap my head around what the right answer is here, whether that should happen. Because if it doesn't happen, it'll never happen, right? It becomes a self-perpetuating thing.
I would say this. I think people need perspective. My family came from Cuba. My mom was a penniless refugee. She came here not speaking English, and they lost everything to communism, everything they ever worked for. And so for me as a kid, I grew up in America knowing that I was incredibly lucky to be an American because we had actual opportunity here, that wasn't going to happen to me. I wasn't going to have the state come down, steal everything I ever worked for, and I wouldn't be able to advance. So I believed in the promise and opportunity of America, and I never needed a leg up. I never used some special program to get somewhere in life. I believe that with opportunity, if you put your mind to anything, you can achieve it in this country. That is a blessing to all of us. So anybody who wants to pretend that we have it so bad in America, or if you're a minority, you can't make it, it's the types of excuses that perpetuate victimhood that keep people down. So embrace the opportunity we have here in America. Make the most of it. Anybody can achieve what they want to achieve if they put their mind to it in America. There's not this artificial barrier that people would like to believe there is.